The house was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes every small sound echo like it's shouting. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, staring at her untouched cup of coffee, feeling the weight of months pressing down on her shoulders. Since Michael's stroke 6 months ago, life had become a series of pauses and half-smiles, a constant reminder of how quickly everything could change. The man she loved, the one who had filled her days with laughter, jokes, and spontaneous little surprises, now moved slowly through their home, often silent, lost in thought, and reliant on her and their son, Ethan, more than ever before. She missed the warmth of his hand in hers, the teasing glances he used to give when he caught her laughing at nothing, the easy comfort of knowing he was beside her through everything. Now, even as she worked around the kitchen or folded laundry, there was a dull ache in the back of her mind, a heaviness that refused to lift. Some days, the silence was unbearable, making the walls feel like they were closing in, trapping her in memories of a life that once felt full and light. On this rainy afternoon, the dull patter of water against the windows matched her mood perfectly, drenching the world outside in gray and leaving her inside feeling even more alone. She sipped at her coffee, but the warmth didn't reach her heart, and she stared at the table, thinking about how life had changed overnight and wondering if she would ever feel the same joy again. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps running across the hardwood floor broke the quiet, startling her. Ethan appeared, drenched from the rain but grinning like a burst of sunlight. "Mom. You won't believe what I've planned," he said, holding a small, brightly wrapped box in his hands. Rachel blinked, caught off guard by his energy and excitement, feeling a small spark of hope flicker inside her. She had grown so used to the stillness of the house that any sudden burst of life seemed almost impossible to believe. Ethan's eyes were wide and sparkling, full of mischief and determination, and for the first time in weeks, she felt her chest loosen slightly, her shoulders drop from their tense perch. Hesitating, she reached for the box, feeling the smooth wrapping paper between her fingers, wondering what her son could have planned to bring a smile to her tired face. Carefully, she untied the ribbon and lifted the lid, expecting perhaps a small gift or a drawing, but instead found only a folded note, written in Ethan's neat, youthful handwriting, "Meet me outside at 5. Don't be late." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. She looked up at her son, unsure whether to laugh, scold him for teasing her, or let herself be swept along by his excitement. There was something in the way he looked at her, hopeful and insistently cheerful, that made her feel as if he were carrying the sun in his hands, trying to light up the dim corners of their home. The note fluttered slightly in the breeze that drifted in through the cracked window, and Rachel felt a strange mix of emotions, anxiety, curiosity, and a flicker of joy she hadn't realized she'd been missing. She glanced back toward Michael, sitting quietly in the living room, his gaze distant as he traced the outlines of a photo frame, and felt a pang of guilt. Was it right to leave him, even for a few moments? But she also knew that for months, she had neglected herself, caught in the routine of caring for him and managing the household, often at the cost of her own happiness. Ethan's invitation, so simple and earnest, felt like a lifeline, a reminder that she was still allowed to feel joy, to step out of the shadows for even a little while. She looked at him again, and his grin widened, sensing her hesitation. "Come on, Mom. You have to trust me," he urged, bouncing on the balls of his feet, the damp strands of hair plastered to his forehead from the rain. Rachel laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in months, the sound of relief threading through it. She set the note down on the table and nodded. "All right," she said, her voice shaking slightly but with determination. "I'll meet you at 5. Ethan clapped his hands, a triumphant cheer that filled the room and, for the first time in a long while, seemed to chase away the heaviness that had settled like dust over everything. Rachel felt a flutter of anticipation and unease. What exactly had he planned? She had no idea, and that was the point. For a moment, she allowed herself to forget the quiet emptiness of her house, to forget the strain of caring for Michael, to forget the lingering sadness that had become a constant companion. Her mind, usually cluttered with worries about her husband's health and the state of their lives, was suddenly focused entirely on the mystery her son had set before her. She realized that this small act of love, this mischievous plan, had already started to work its magic, pulling her heart toward a place of hope she hadn't visited in months. And yet, as the rain continued to fall, and the gray clouds hung low over the neighborhood, Rachel couldn't shake a tiny flicker of fear. What if the world outside didn't match the warmth she felt now? What if the moment was fleeting, slipping through her fingers like the raindrops sliding down the windowpane? Ethan, sensing the sudden seriousness in her eyes, reached out and took her hand, giving it a squeeze that was at once playful and grounding. "Mom, trust me," he said again, his tone gentle now, serious in a way that made her chest tighten. That simple phrase, filled with love and insistence, felt like a bridge across the emptiness that had filled their home for so long. Rachel looked at him, feeling tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were a mixture of relief, love, and the strange excitement of stepping into something unknown, something alive. She realized that her son had done something remarkable. He had reminded her that even when life felt heavy and gray, there were still moments that could surprise her, that could fill her heart again, even if just a little. The note in her hand, small and unassuming, felt like a key opening a door she hadn't dared touch for months. And as she took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever awaited her outside, she understood that this was more than just a game or a surprise from a boy to his mother. It was a lifeline, a gentle push toward reclaiming a part of her life that had been lost in the shadows of illness, silence, and unspoken longing. Rachel set the coffee aside, feeling a sense of anticipation she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time, and for the first time since Michael's stroke, she felt that maybe, just maybe, the house could feel alive again. And with Ethan's bright, determined eyes locked on hers, she took that first step toward the unknown, toward hope, and toward a moment that could change everything. The clock struck 5, and Rachel stepped outside, feeling the damp air cling to her skin as she scanned the quiet street, half expecting Ethan to have disappeared or changed his mind, but there he was, bouncing slightly on his heels, holding 2 steaming cups of cocoa, the aroma warm and comforting even in the cool evening air. "Come on, Mom," he said, his eyes sparkling, his excitement contagious. "You need a break." Rachel smiled despite the knot of worry that never quite left her chest, the worry about Michael, about the house, about how life had shifted so abruptly and left her feeling unsteady. But for a moment, she let herself be guided, letting Ethan take the lead as they walked together down their neighborhood streets, the rain having cleared to reveal a fresh, glistening world around them. He talked non-stop, about school, friends, funny things he had seen, stories that twisted and turned in ways only a teenager's mind could create, and Rachel found herself laughing freely, genuinely, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in months, like the clouds of sorrow had lifted. Just enough for sunlight to peek through. They reached a small park, empty except for the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, and Ethan stopped, holding out a card he had made, covered in doodles and hearts, his fingers trembling slightly as he handed it to her. "I made this for you," he said quietly, almost shyly now, "because you always make me feel better. Now it's my turn." Rachel's eyes stung, and she hugged him tightly, holding him close, feeling the warmth of his small body pressed to hers, realizing that his love and care were more powerful than any medicine, more healing than any words could be. A quiet reminder that even in the midst of sadness, there were moments of profound joy and connection. She pulled back slightly to look at him, noticing the seriousness in his gaze, the maturity that peeked through his youthful enthusiasm, and he said softly, "Mom, you deserve happiness too. Don't forget that." The words hit her like a gentle wave, washing over the years of exhaustion, grief, and worry, reminding her that she was more than a caretaker, more than a shadow wandering through her own home, that she still had the right to feel alive, to laugh, to breathe without guilt. They sat on a wet bench for a while, sipping their cocoa, talking about dreams and silly things, the kind of conversation that felt simple but carried a weight of meaning, the bond between mother and son deepening in ways Rachel hadn't realized she'd been missing. A connection that somehow felt both tender and strong, fragile and unbreakable all at once. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Ethan took her hand again, tugging her gently to her feet. "Come on, Mom," he said, pointing toward the small hill at the edge of the park. "I want to show you something." Curiosity sparked in Rachel, mingling with the nervous thrill of stepping out of her comfort zone, and she followed him, her heart beating a little faster, her mind temporarily free of the heavy cloud of sadness that had settled over her life since Michael's stroke. When they reached the top of the hill, Ethan turned to her with a grin, and Rachel noticed the way his face glowed in the fading sunlight, full of hope and innocence yet tinged with a kind of wisdom that only children forced to witness life's difficulties often develop. "Look," he said simply, and Rachel followed his gaze to the horizon, where the city lights were beginning to twinkle, the world below bathed in soft shades of orange and purple, the sky stretching infinitely, vast and full of possibilities. She felt her chest expand, a deep, aching breath she hadn't realized she was holding slipping out, and for a moment, the weight of months of quiet, worry, and sadness seemed to lift, replaced by a gentle, thrilling sense of freedom, a reminder that life could still surprise her, that even small moments of beauty could reignite her spirit. Ethan handed her the card again, and she opened it carefully, reading the words he had written in his careful, youthful hand, the simple sentences carrying a profound weight: "You are strong. You are loved. Don't forget to smile." Rachel blinked, tears spilling freely now, not of sorrow but of relief, gratitude, and joy, feeling her son's love as a tangible, comforting force, one that reminded her she wasn't alone, that she could find happiness even while Michael recovered, that she could step back into life without guilt or fear. They walked home slowly, talking less, letting the silence be comfortable rather than oppressive, each step filled with a sense of quiet renewal, the evening air crisp and fresh, the world around them holding a subtle magic that Rachel hadn't noticed in months. She thought about Michael, about the long road ahead, and realized that moments like this, simple, human, full of care and laughter, were the pieces of life she had been missing, the kind of warmth that could slowly rebuild a heart shattered by illness and grief. As they approached the house, Ethan squeezed her hand again and whispered, "Mom, I just want you to be happy," and Rachel smiled, feeling the knot in her chest loosen just a little more, feeling a spark of hope ignite within her, a recognition that love came in many forms, sometimes quiet and unassuming, sometimes through the smallest gestures, but always powerful enough to heal. That evening, as Rachel set down her coat by the door and glanced back at Ethan, she realized that he had given her more than just cocoa and a card. He had given her a reminder of resilience, a chance to feel joy again, a momentary escape from sadness, and a bridge back to life, proving that even in the shadow of hardship, the warmth of family, the love of a child, and the simple acts of care could reignite the heart in ways nothing else could. And while she knew the quiet challenges of the home and Michael's recovery were far from over, Rachel felt something she hadn't in a long time, a flicker of hope, a pulse of life, a sense that perhaps happiness was not gone forever, that with her son's love lighting the way, she could step back into a world that still had color, laughter, and a promise of better days. She lingered on the doorstep a moment longer, looking out at the fading sky, feeling the gentle breeze on her face, the warmth of Ethan's hand still in hers, realizing that this simple walk, this small adventure, had changed her more than she could have imagined, that her heart, so long heavy, had begun to remember how to beat with lightness, with hope, with love, and that perhaps life, after all, could be beautiful again, one small step at a time. Back home, the familiar creak of the floorboards greeted Rachel as she stepped inside, and she felt the quiet of the house differently now, not as oppressive as before, but still heavy with months of slow recovery and silence, her heart both anxious and hopeful as she glanced toward Michael sitting by the window, staring at an old wedding photo with a distant, almost fragile smile. His fingers trembled slightly as he traced the edges of the picture, a silent echo of the life they had shared before the stroke, and Rachel realized how much he longed to reconnect, to feel the warmth that had once been a constant in their lives, to find the laughter that had been stolen from their home. Ethan followed her inside, his energy subdued now, replaced by a quiet determination as he spoke softly. "Mom," he was trying to cheer me up today, glancing at Michael with a small, encouraging smile. Michael turned his gaze toward them, a faint smile tugging at his lips, and whispered, "I can see that. I want to feel that again too," his voice hesitant but filled with a longing Rachel hadn't heard in months, a mixture of vulnerability and hope that made her chest ache with both love and sympathy. She knelt beside him, taking his hand in hers, feeling the familiar warmth and slight tremor, the pulse of life beneath her touch, and in that instant, she realized that Ethan's small act of kindness, his card, his cocoa, his insistence on taking her out, had done more than cheer her up. It had opened a door for both of them, reminding Michael that he wasn't trapped in a world of silence, that he could still connect, laugh, and be present again, even if slowly, carefully, and imperfectly. The three of them sat together in the living room, Michael's hand in Rachel's, Ethan beside them, the soft hum of the city outside their windows blending with the quiet of the room, and Rachel felt a fragile but undeniable spark of life return to their home, a warmth that seemed to settle in the corners where shadows had lingered for too long. Conversation flowed slowly at first, awkward and hesitant, Michael's words careful, measured, but each one carrying the weight of effort, of determination to participate, and Rachel felt a swell of pride and love for him, for the courage it took to try, for the willingness to return to life one small word, one small smile at a time. Ethan, sensing the tension and the hope mingling in the room, began to tell stories, to joke quietly, to offer little observations that made both of his parents laugh softly, and Rachel felt the house breathe again, felt the pulse of connection, the subtle but powerful return of family energy, laughter, and tenderness, like a long-lost rhythm returning to a song they thought had ended. Michael's smile widened slightly as he joined in, teasing Ethan gently about one of his stories, the sound of his voice unfamiliar but comforting, like a bridge back to the man she had loved, the one who had once filled every corner of their lives with warmth, humor, and quiet romance. Rachel noticed the small gestures he made, the careful attention in his eyes, the way he reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face, subtle but full of intention, and she realized that love could survive trauma, could change shape and form, could slow down but still thrive, like embers glowing steadily beneath ash, waiting to burst back into flame. Ethan watched them both, his youthful optimism tempered by the quiet understanding that he had played a part in bringing this moment to life, and Rachel felt a wave of gratitude for him, for his love, for his gentle insistence that life didn't have to be sad forever, that joy could be found again even after hardship, that laughter, connection, and care were the threads that could mend a family. As evening fell and the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the windows, Rachel leaned against Michael's shoulder, feeling his warmth and fragility at once, and she realized that this was a different kind of intimacy than they had before, deeper, gentler, rooted not in passion or urgency but in survival, care, and quiet devotion, a love that had weathered storms and now hummed softly in their hearts. She thought about the months of struggle, the tears shed in the quiet of the night, the loneliness and fear, and she understood that those moments had not been wasted, they had made this reunion of hearts, this slow reconnection, more precious, more meaningful, more tender than she could have imagined. Michael squeezed her hand lightly, a small but deliberate gesture, and Rachel met his eyes, seeing a flicker of the man she had married, and perhaps, just perhaps, the beginning of the life they could rebuild together. Ethan, sensing the shift in the room, smiled shyly, and Rachel ruffled his hair, feeling the warmth of her son and husband in a perfect, fleeting balance, knowing that though the road ahead would be long and sometimes painful, moments like this made everything worthwhile, proving that love could endure even after tragedy, that hope could shine in the smallest gestures, and that family, connection, and mutual care could heal wounds no medicine ever could. The room felt alive in a new way, the weight of months of silence lifting slightly, replaced by laughter, quiet conversation, and a shared understanding that they were in this together, that even when life had been cruel and heavy, there were ways to rediscover joy, intimacy, and warmth through patience, effort, and love. Rachel noticed the little details she had almost forgotten, the curve of Michael's smile, the sound of Ethan's laughter, the softness in her own chest as she felt connected to them both, and she knew that these moments, small as they were the foundation of their new life, a life where healing was slow but steady, and love was patient, nurturing, and enduring. She thought about the future, about the days ahead, and realized that happiness didn't have to be loud or dramatic, it could be quiet, subtle, and powerful, hidden in small gestures, tender words, shared laughter, and the simple act of being together, and she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. Michael's eyes, soft but alert, met hers again, and she saw in them a longing and hope that mirrored her own, a silent promise that they would continue forward, slowly, carefully, but with hearts open to the possibility of joy, connection, and intimacy once more. Ethan, sensing that the moment was perfect, snuggled into Rachel's side, and for a while, the three of them simply sat together, breathing, laughing softly, and letting the quiet intimacy of the evening wrap around them like a comforting blanket. Rachel realized then that healing didn't have to be dramatic, it could be gentle, incremental, like a sunrise creeping over the horizon, illuminating the world slowly but surely. The love between her and Michael, tested by tragedy, strengthened in its own quiet way, while Ethan's presence reminded them both of the joy and care that could bring light to even the darkest days. And as the evening deepened into night, Rachel felt the warmth of her family, the slow rekindling of connection, and a sense of hope she hadn't felt in months, knowing that life, though changed, could still hold beauty, tenderness, and love, and that even after the hardest trials, there was room for laughter, for closeness, and for moments that reminded them all why family was worth everything. In that one evening, they had found a bridge back to each other, a path forward that didn't erase the past but allowed them to carry it with grace, patience, and a renewed capacity for care, proving that even in the shadow of hardship, the human heart could rediscover warmth, laughter, and the quiet magic of love. Weeks passed, and Rachel noticed changes in Michael that filled her heart with a cautious but growing hope. His smiles came more easily now, his voice carried warmth she hadn't heard in months, and little gestures, like reaching for her hand or teasing Ethan gently about something silly, brought light back into their home, reminding her that love could heal slowly, quietly, and beautifully. Ethan remained their constant spark, his cheerful presence, thoughtful surprises, and endless encouragement acting as a bridge between the past months of struggle and the promise of brighter days ahead. He would leave little notes around the house, plan short walks or outings, and always make sure his mother laughed at least once every day, his youthful energy and pure intention weaving threads of happiness back into the fabric of their family. Rachel found herself more present, more aware of the love surrounding her, and she began to embrace the small moments she had previously overlooked, the warmth of the morning sun on the kitchen table, the soft hum of Michael humming while he worked on exercises to strengthen himself, the simple joy of Ethan telling her about a funny incident at school that made her laugh until her chest ached. Every day brought a reminder that healing was not linear, that setbacks were natural, but that progress, however subtle, mattered immensely. One evening, Rachel watched Michael sitting in his favorite chair by the window, holding a photo of their wedding day in his hands, tracing the faces gently, and she felt a mix of nostalgia, longing, and gratitude. The man she loved had been through so much, yet he was still there, still willing to try, still capable of love, and that resilience made her love him in a deeper, more mature way than she had before. Ethan peeked around the corner, noticing the quiet connection between his parents, and quietly whispered, "Mom, you and Dad will be happy again. I just know it," his words carrying both innocence and a profound sense of understanding, the kind only children who witness challenges firsthand sometimes develop. Rachel hugged him tightly, feeling tears sting her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of relief, hope, and a deep, abiding love that had been dormant for far too long. She realized that life had changed irreversibly, that their past life of effortless joy and carefree love was gone, but that a new form of love had emerged, one that was patient, nurturing, and grounded in shared struggle and understanding. Michael joined them, tentative at first, then gradually more confident, his voice blending with theirs as they shared stories, laughed softly, and reflected on the week, and Rachel felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. It was a peace born not of forgetting the hardship, but of embracing the love, resilience, and family bond that had endured through it. They sat together in the living room one night, the room lit by a single lamp, shadows dancing gently on the walls, and Rachel noticed how natural it felt to be close again, to share warmth and touch, to simply exist in the same space with those she loved without the crushing weight of fear or sorrow pressing down. She reflected on how small, everyday acts of love, Ethan's notes, Michael's cautious but intentional gestures, shared laughter, had transformed their home from a place of silence and tension into a haven of connection and comfort, a place where healing was ongoing but possible, a reminder that even the hardest moments could be softened by care and attention. Rachel realized she had grown stronger too, more patient, more attuned to the subtle rhythms of her family, understanding that love was not always dramatic or immediate but often quiet, persistent, and steady, a force that could guide them through hardship with grace. The nights were still sometimes long, and the days sometimes filled with struggle, but she had learned to cherish the small victories. Michael managing a simple meal without frustration, Ethan sharing a heartfelt joke, the three of them sitting together in silence, feeling the comfort of each other's presence without needing words. One evening, after dinner, Rachel watched Michael gently brush a crumb from Ethan's shirt and felt her heart swell with love, recognizing the tenderness that had survived despite the stroke, a reminder that intimacy could be redefined, that love could take new shapes, and that connection could thrive even after life-altering events. She felt a deep gratitude for her son, whose compassion and efforts had reminded her that joy and laughter were possible, that love could be renewed, and that even in moments of sadness, small acts could reignite the spark of life. Walking through the house later that night, Rachel reflected on the journey they had all shared, the months of fear, the quiet pain, the uncertainty, and now the slow, steady bloom of hope, laughter, and renewed intimacy. Michael reached out for her hand, a small gesture, yet full of meaning, and she felt the weight of their shared experiences settle into a quiet, reassuring presence, the kind that comes from surviving together, caring together, and loving together despite all obstacles. Ethan, now tucked into bed, whispered goodnight with a content smile, and Rachel knew that the days ahead would not be without challenge, but that they were equipped to face them with love, patience, and resilience, and that the emotional scars of the past had not weakened them but had instead strengthened the bonds between them. Sitting by the window later, Rachel gazed at the stars scattered across the night sky, feeling a sense of infinite possibility, understanding that life had changed, yes, but that it had also opened the door to a deeper, more meaningful kind of happiness, one rooted in gratitude, shared strength, and enduring love. She realized that healing could be a quiet, patient process, one where joy was found in small moments, intimacy in gestures of care, and connection in shared presence, and she felt a sense of peace knowing that, together, they had the foundation to build a life that, while different from before, was rich in love, resilience, and hope. The months of hardship had shown them the fragility of life, but also its beauty, and Rachel knew that even after the darkest times, there could be light, laughter, and warmth waiting for them in every day, especially with Ethan's unwavering love and Michael's determined presence reminding her that family could be the greatest source of joy, healing, and purpose. She felt a quiet thrill of anticipation for the future, knowing that there would be challenges, but also that each day offered a new opportunity to strengthen bonds, embrace love, and create memories, and she understood that happiness was not a single moment but a series of small, intentional acts of care, compassion, and connection that wove together to form the tapestry of their renewed life. That night, as Rachel turned off the lights and paused to look at Michael sleeping peacefully in his chair, she felt a profound gratitude for the journey they had endured, for Ethan's unwavering support, and for the chance to witness the slow, steady return of warmth, laughter, and love in their home, and she understood that life, while forever changed, could still be beautiful, fulfilling, and deeply meaningful, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and the power of family, care, and enduring affection to light even the darkest nights with hope, tenderness, and quiet joy.